Um, so before we get started, thank you to especially my presenters for doing this for me, and then everyone for showing up. I know that everybody's here because we all just want what's best for our kids, and we're all just trying to figure out how to do that together. So thanks everybody for coming. Before we get started, I did want to just say that we are going to be trying to give you the best advice possible, but in no way should this be construed as legal advice. If you have questions about legality, I will try my best to field those, but please understand that I am by no means a lawyer. I have done some research, but that does not make me an expert at all. If you have any questions about legality of homeschooling, I can definitely tell you, do my best understanding, but there are a few sources that I can point you to if you'd like to look into the matter more yourself. And then I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit. My name's Colleen Rittmeyer. I lead a homeschool group in the area. It's got about 300 families in it. I do homeschool programming at the DeKalb, Sycamore, and Cortland libraries. And I have been homeschooling. This is going to be my 9th year. I taught for 3 years Montessori prior to that. So that's just a little bit about me. So I am going to start sharing my super fancy presentation now. This is the name of my homeschool. If you do choose a homeschool, you get to name your homeschool, which is kind of fun because you are technically classified as a private school. So this is mine. And before I get started, I did want to address a little bit about like just some general questions that I know people will probably have as I'm going through like what my typical day looks like. So I'm just going to talk about like what a typical day and typical week looks like for me and my kids in my homeschool. And then we'll pass it on to the next person. So this is just a really general chart. This is by no means any kind of law or rule or anything, but a lot of people ask, how long should I expect my kids to spend homeschooling in a typical day? So it really depends on the age of your child, and it depends on you and your child. Like you notice even on this chart, there's a minimum and maximum that are pretty far apart from each other. It really depends on the kid, but the thing to know about homeschooling is that you will spend significantly less time in most situations teaching your child than they would spend in a public school learning it. And that's just simply because you're being a lot more one-on-one. It's not that, you know, we're any better than teachers or anything like that. It's just because if you're one-on-one with your child, it's a lot easier to work at their pace. So I think a lot of people expect that because, you know, I'm not doing, you know, like a full 6 days, I'm not doing enough work for my child. It's, you know, really just all about doing what your kid needs for a particular day. And then as I go through this too, I know there's some questions about grade level requirements. They can all be found on the Illinois State Board of Education website. I put the link there, and I'm also going to have some resources to share too. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through it, that's how I pull a lot of my requirements. If I'm ever not sure about like, is my kid at this particular grade level or where they should be or anything of that nature. So I've actually homeschooled preschool through high school. I have 2 children, they're 8 and 9 years old. And I have taught one child full-time, and she just graduated high school this year. I didn't cry at all. And I have done a few other children part-time. So I've done everything from 2-year-olds to 18-year-olds. So I'm going to speak a little bit about each level, about what that looked like for me. So preschool is definitely something that some people choose to homeschool preschool if they're going to do it. Some people don't. It's something that I feel like preschool in particular is really up to the parent because it depends on the child, it depends on your situation. Some kids need a little more structure and some kids really don't. But in general, most preschool kids flourish really well if they're just developing motor skills. They're developing their fine motor skills, they're developing their gross motor skills. They're doing a lot of hands-on learning. Most kids this age are really kinesthetic learners, which just means they learn by touching and moving and all that motion stuff. So when I did preschool for my kids, I really focused a lot on games. I focused a lot on things that they could manipulate. And this is where some of my Montessori came into practice too, because a lot of it is based in preschool to early elementary ages. So I use a lot of that stuff. Now, the other thing too, we're talking about selecting curriculum is I always say that it kind of, you have to weigh what's most important to you if you value your money or your time more. I personally value my money more, so I choose to spend a lot of time creating resources rather than buying them. You can buy complete sets of curriculum where you don't have to do anything other than just open it up and read it and give the kids the stuff, and you know they can you can pay someone to do like an online school system for you. I choose to spend more time creating it rather than buying them outright. So that's just a choice that I've made personally. And when I was doing preschool with that, Pinterest was my very best friend. because it was just really easy to open up Pinterest and find all these super cute little games about, learning this thing or doing this skill with my kids. So I really focused a lot on play-based learning for my preschool age kids, and they did about 30 minutes to an hour per day. And a lot of it was outside, as Karen is enjoying, because it's just a glorious thing about homeschool. You can do it in your pajamas, you can go outside, and it's really nice for the little ones to have that freedom in particular. My two kids are currently in elementary age. A lot of kids here are still in kinesthetic learning stages until about late elementary, and then most kids start transitioning to more abstract learning. So just kind of being aware of that and being aware of your individual kid. So I still, with elementary kids, focus a lot on games and hands-on activities whenever possible. At this age, I kind of transition more. I worry about language arts and I worry about math. That's just me as a person. So I tend to use more structured curriculum for those two things than I do for science and social studies, because we just get so much of that based on everything that I do. I also have done daily writing with my kids. I usually start them in elementary, I go all the way through high school with that, because I think that writing is very important. And I did choose to break down my week too, because my situation I think is a little unusual, because I do, like I mentioned, so much programming for my homeschool group in the library. We're out a lot. So we're typically at the library at least twice a week. I'm either running a program or I'm running a class for other homeschoolers, and we typically do field trips at least twice a week. I partner with places like Fargo skateboarding and a bunch of other places around the area to do homeschool sessions like wall camp and things like that. So we do things like that pretty often too. So that gets a lot of those other science and things out of the way. So I really just focus mostly on math and language arts when we're doing this is our sit down learning time. I recently got tablets for my children too in elementary, and I think that's helped a lot. It kind of gives them some learning opportunities when we're driving in between all our places. And I also do typing in elementary. That's just a choice I've made because computers are not going anywhere, and the sooner they learn to do it properly, the better it's going to be. They don't have to unlearn hunting and pecking, is my theory. When I'm in my elementary, kids do about an hour to 2 hours of work per day, depending on the day, depending on the kid. In middle school, and my thing about homeschooling is I feel like it gets easier the older you get. I think that people get really scared about teaching older kids, but they just start getting more self-directed, which is really nice. So right around middle school, they kind of tend to hit that stride where they're, thinking more abstractly. They're able to, you can just give them work and they can read through it and just, come with you in questions. So I tend to go more towards that. I really like kids to be self-directed as much as possible. That's just a personal philosophy I have with learning. I typically start using Saxon math around middle school. I feel like Saxon math works really well for abstract thinking and kids who are in the middle school, high school age range, and obviously not for every child, but that's a personal preference. That's really the only, I think, curriculum that I'm going to say by name, because I think that it does a good job. The language skills in Saxon are abysmal, but the math is pretty solid. So I typically in middle school start assigning books too, along with their regular language arts lessons, just trying to get more in depth with that. And then I also, I always do civics around 8th grade, because that's when they would hit that. In public schools, they usually test for, they do the government test or whatever it is around 8th grade. So I usually hit that. But other than that, I let the kids pick social studies, and then I create lessons off of that. Prior to that, and for kids, I'm usually here's a list of things I'm willing to teach you. Which ones do you want? Just as they get older, I try to let them pick more and more what they want. And then for science, I try to do a science experiment every couple weeks. And then for middle school, I really like to focus on group lessons for a lot of language arts things. I've offered weekly writing and reading classes. And I think that it works really well with the middle school kids, because they can bounce off each other a little bit and enjoy that a little bit more. And I really try to do project-based rather than test-based. I usually teach, I treat it like a unit where I teach them how to take a test. And then after that, we mostly do projects. And in middle school, it's about 2 to 4 hours a day. And I'm going a little over time, so I'm going to try to speed up. I'm just going to kind of skim over high school, because I think that Karen's going to be able to address this a little bit better than me, because I've only put one kid through high school. So the thing about high school is that was really nice for me. There are a lot more opportunities for my student, for her to choose what she wanted to do. I personally feel like dual credit is a really great thing. So that's where the kid goes to a community college, and then they get credit for obviously the class they take there, and then you count it as high school credit too. And this has become pretty popular even with public schools too, but it's really it's a lot easier to do it when you're homeschooling, because there's a lot more freedom with that. I did put a link for Kishwaukee College. They are really great with working with homeschoolers. They've got the woman's name that I usually contact her is Graciela Horta. She's really great. And I think that her information is if you go on this link too. So that they can answer a lot of that questions about that if you have older kids that you're looking for options with. And usually when I'm good for math up to about trigonometry. So when kids get there, like my theory is they can go to Kishwaukee after that because I'm done with math with them. So that's the nice thing, you know, about dual credit is that you can kind of use that to fill some of your own gaps, which is what I did with math. With high school, I started my student when she was a sophomore. She did about 1 to 2 classes per semester, and it was really great just to get her feet wet and kind of get her used to college. And then I put a few other things about transcripts and ACTs, but the thing I'd like to say about this, just before I pass it off, is the Johnsburg Library is a really great resource. They've got a homeschool resource area, and the woman who helped set that up, her name is Kathy Wentz. She does a ton of workshops about homeschooling in general, and she does focus a lot on high school, about like how to make a transcript, how to, you know, pick things, how to get your kid into college afterwards. So I really recommend that if you're looking for options for high schoolers. So that is what I have, and I am going to pass it off to Cher now. So I'm going to highlight you, Cher, spotlight you, and I'm going to mute myself so you can go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Colleen. My name is Cher Page, and I've been homeschooling for 5 years. My kids are 12 and 13 and a half. That's very important. And so I can't see all of you right now, but I'm just gonna safely assume, I was gonna have you show hands, but I'll safely assume that, that most of you are new, like you're just getting started. And I was thinking earlier today, kind of put myself back in my shoes, you know, 5 or so years ago. And I remember feeling terrified. And so I thought, you know, what did I hear from folks who'd been doing it a while, and what do I want to share with you guys? And so I know that like I had spent a good 6 or more months like researching homeschooling and made a real conscious decision. I was still scared, but a lot of you are just like, boom, like this is what we're doing. And so I know you're in crisis mode, and I know what all that I've prepared to say to you today. I don't want it to confuse you. I hope it doesn't. I'm coming from a totally different like homeschool angle. But I just wanted to tell you, first of all, like no matter what you do, no matter what curriculum you buy, no matter if you just sit around for a whole year with your kids and do nothing, your kids are gonna be okay, no matter what. And you're gonna be fine, they'll be fine. And I know that because kids are learners. And they're always learning, no matter what. John Holt, he's a very famous author and education person. He said that birds fly and fish swim and kids learn. It's what they do. So no matter what, they're gonna learn from anything and everything and everybody around them. And so relax and enjoy yourself. We've come to think, I think through our schooling that that learning is hard and it's work and it's drudgery and stuff, but learning is fun. And so if we just kind of enjoy ourselves and come and relax and show that to our kids and have that attitude, that's gonna go a long way. Also too, something else that I've learned is, before even thinking about, before you hit that, add to cart button right now, focus on your relationship with your kids and get to know them and be a student of them. Who are they? What do they like to do? What are they interested in? And then how do they learn? And then kind of use that as your guide for what you're going to do this year, and then reassess the next year and that kind of thing. So give it a chance. Give it a year. Someone told me that too. Give it at least a year. The first year is kind of a wash. Like you're figuring out what to do, oh my gosh, we're in this situation, what are we gonna do? Give it a chance. And so I'm gonna talk about unschooling, which is kind of at the way other end of the spectrum, pretty much philosophy-wise. But just hear me out. This is what unschoolers are. So unschooling, the name so it's like not school. It's like seeing the way school does things and then doing things very differently. And so I think a lot of our, especially in school, it's like there's this body of information And then it's the teacher's job to like deposit that all this certain information into the child, and the child is like an empty vessel, and so you're just like pouring information into this empty vessel. And so with unschooling, we think of, well, no, the child's a whole human being with interests and curiosities and passions and things that excite them and interest them, and so we let those things kind of lead the way into what we're gonna do and what they want to know, what they're curious about and stuff. So that changes like my role as a homeschool mom from one of like teacher and enforcer of, you know, reading and assignments and stuff, and it moves me kind of alongside on the same level as my child and makes me co-learner and collaborator and supporter and resourcer and cheerleader and ally and all those things. So so in everything that we do, it's very like non-coercive. Like we don't force things. Everything is consent-based. Anything that we do, anything that I, you know, might suggest based on their interests, any classes or books that we read or places we go or things we do, I've given them freedom to say even no thank you, and that's okay, and respect that. So in this way, it's kind of like, also another distinctive is thinking of it as like a whole lifestyle versus just a method of academics. So it's kind of the philosophy is like broadening what we do, broadening what we think of as our like homeschool experience. And so it requires deschooling. I don't know if you guys have heard that term, deschooling, which is something that parents need to do. There's an aspect for children being pulled out of public school. That's something you can look into. But in the parent aspect, especially if you guys have gone to public school or private school your whole lives, we tend to equate schooling with education, right? They're like one and the same thing. And so deschooling is a process where you like disentangle the two. And so you kind of think about all the ways that your schooling has like informed your thoughts about education, and then like shedding those layers. Like some ideas would be, well, learning can only happen between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. And yet we know, well, no, kids can learn all day long, every day. They can learn on the weekends. They can learn in ways that don't produce any paperwork or worksheets or anything like that. They can learn about things that we don't even see, like they're learning things and there's no evidence, like an adult hasn't observed it. And so we can trust that they're learning all the time. And so it turns into like a 24/7 kind of thing, which sounds crazy, but that's what we do. And so a typical day or week to us looks a little different. We don't have like a schedule, but we have a routine, you know, just like anybody. People, we like our routines, right? And so I usually get up, have my coffee, my kids wake up when they're rested, and then we have breakfast, and then we usually head over to the couch and we read together. And so we have books that we read together, and then they, you know, might read their library books or whatever. We hang out that way, and then usually after that, they do some writing that they want to do that's meaningful to them, or whatever they want to do at that point. I don't know, Calvin's trying to learn cursive still, so that's his little personal goal. And then we do use a little bit of math. I'll explain that later. And then we go outside, you know, walk the dog, whatever, have our lunch. And then usually after that, it's allowing a lot of time for like little arts and crafty things or little sciencey things or Netflixy stuff we want to do. And so kind of getting, you know, doing all those things. My kids love video games. A lot of the days are video games. So those are like our home days. We do love being home, and so we usually try to space out any outing days with home days. So we do a Tuesday co-op, and then usually another day during the week we want to get together with friends or go to museums or Colleen's activities or whatever we wanted to go to the library, things like that. But it's funny because like in my mind, that's still the schoolish way of me thinking, right? And so we're doing school during the day. And yet if I really watch my kids, I notice after dinner, they like come alive and they're so creative and they're doing, to me, most of their learning is happening at night by themselves in their rooms. And then they're showing me stuff and then we're talking, we're having conversations and all those things. So anyway, so that's that. And then curriculum wise, do unschoolers use curriculum? Yes, occasionally, but the relationship to it is a little bit different. So we see it as just like one tool in our toolbox of all these other things. And so I usually try, as I'm thinking about, like I said, what my kids are into, you know, my kids told me this year they want to learn about DeKalb history. Like, yeah. So before, I mean, I guess there's not really like Saxon doesn't sell DeKalb history textbook, but let's say they did. I would probably try to think of some other like creative ways and meaningful ways for them to learn what they want to know and things for us to go do and see and be out there and maybe talk to experts in their field. Or, you know, I saw some Homeschool-a-Palooza video earlier today and I was like, oh, DeKalb County had the history museum. What? Yes, let's go do that. So it's looking for those things. It's also concentrating on their strengths versus just trying to fill in all the gaps with the little, you know, with the little things they're missing or their little weaknesses. It's looking at, okay, what are they really strong at? And let's focus on that. And let's like really support them in that, especially as they're getting older and trying to refine like what they want to do and stuff. I know that that's coming up. It's less is more, you know, if you just focus on just a couple things, you know, each day, each week, each season, whatever, that really allows for like deep dives into certain subjects and stuff. So I like that. I don't know how much time, how am I doing on time, Colleen?
You're doing okay.
Okay. So I will mention 2 curriculums that I do like, that we do use, that my kids enjoy and have asked to keep. So we're doing it. One is Math UC. They really like that. They like the short videos. They like the manipulatives. And I like that it's mastery, where you master one idea or one concept, and then, you know, you practice it, and then you go on to the next one, and then the next one, and they're levels. So it's not like grades based or age based, it's levels. So you just kind of work your way up at your own pace, kind of do your own thing. And I love that. I love that freedom to do that. And then the other one is Brave Writer. And that is a language arts, a literature-based language arts curriculum. And I hate to say curriculum, it just feels like I don't know, it's a program. It's a guide, which is what I love. And so she gives you these concepts, and then you can kind of build your lifestyle kind of around it. And it's that, and then writing. And I love that she talks about how it's not like teaching writing to your kid. You're becoming a supporter and growing them as a writer in their journey. And so it's like partnering with your kid to do that. And so I love that. And yeah, and so that's it. Thanks for letting me talk about all this crazy stuff.
All right, thank you for sharing. I'm going to spotlight Karen if you're ready. And I think you're muted still. Oh, all right, whenever you're ready.
There we go.
All right.
Yeah, I was outside, but somebody started mowing their lawn, so I had to come in.
We appreciate that.
My name is Karen Harrelson. I have 4 children, and this upcoming school year, I will have a senior, a junior, a freshman, and a 7th grader. So I've been at this for quite some time, And it was always our intention to homeschool all of our kids through high school. So we started with the intention of, we're in this for the long haul. And so learned a few things along this long road. One of them being just kind of a view of, we're raising adults, I'm not raising kids, we're raising adults. They're going to be a child for a small portion of their life. And so keeping that end goal in mind, that's been a really nice framework. And then I had a very hard lesson that it took me a long time to learn, and that was regarding scheduling. So I would, buy a piece of curriculum that I really liked. I really liked it. And they had everything laid out, day 1, day 2, day 3, et cetera, et cetera. And by golly, by day 5, I was already behind, So, and then I started beating myself up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're behind. But, I had 4 children that were 5 and under at some point, So, I mean, somebody was getting into something, all my plans, my beautiful, perfect plans get derailed. And there's usually something that derails my perfect plan almost every day. So just having the mindset that, yes, it's great to have a plan. It's great to have a, something set out for the day, but those plans can change and often do change out of necessity. So what my day looks like now is very different than what my day looked like way back when I had little ones. My background is I taught high school mathematics for 7 years before we had children. So math education is my huge passion. So I do teach some homeschool math classes for high schoolers in the area. And so my kids are in those classes. So I do teach those. And then with the other subjects, we do a lot of learning together. Like for biology and chemistry, we sit down and we learn it all together. My oldest is on the autism spectrum, and learning has been very difficult the entire road. And had he been in public school, more than likely he would have gotten accommodations, and the material he would have gotten different material, and the expectations would have been lowered for him. What I have chosen to do was keep those expectations a little higher, because I know he can learn. He just needs more time. And so that's been a true blessing that I've experienced in homeschooling. I can give my kids the extra time. So we're not just, we need to get through this chapter and we're going to have the test on this date, and, whatever you learn, you learn. That would have been devastating for my child. So we do sit and we learn about paramecium together, and we look at, we bought a microscope, and, we look at the things together. And I have really enjoyed and treasured going back and learning all this stuff again. I mean, I'm 52 years old. It's been ages since I've looked at a picture of a paramecium or an amoeba or anything like that. And it's just been really, really cool to go back and do that with them together. Because if they were reading the books on their own, honestly, they're not really excited about, bacteria. But I can say, wow, look at this. This is not this bacteria is not a simple life form. This is amazing, so that's something that I've really, really treasured. So we do a lot of those things together. Kids read, one of the things that I decided for history for my kids is I wanted them to read more engaging books about history, and not, a really surface survey of history, for example. So they'll read books and then we have a discussion together. So they'll do the reading on their own, but then we'll get together and we'll discuss, and I'll ask questions, what do you think about this? We can connect it to today's politics and things like that. So I really enjoy those kinds of discussions that I have with my kids. I did farm out Spanish to, because that is something that, hola is about it, and that's about all I knew. and gracias. And those about the 2 words. So I did enroll in an online Spanish program for my kids, and an online writing program too, just because I wanted somebody else's eyes on their writing. And so that's been a good thing. But other than that, some of the things that I've done throughout our homeschooling time is, you know, say for math, because math is really like numero uno priority in this household as far as academics is concerned. You know, I'll have 2 of my 4 children find math pretty easy, and then 2 of them find it more challenging. So I'll sit at the table, and I'll have 1 of each on either side of me. And so I'm able to kind of go back and forth between them and ask them questions and things like that. And then I'm able to kind of manage 2 at a time like that. Other than that, they have a lot of things that they do on their own. So Colleen's suggesting, you know, as they get older, they get a little bit more independent with their learning. And so they do, you know, all their writing assignments on their own, obviously. They do their English on their own, but I do check in with them and make sure that they're understanding. And they do vocabulary on their own and things like that. So I've utilized several software programs. One company that I've used for a long, long time, they have great books and they have softwares, Critical Thinking Press. Just love their stuff. They have all kinds of interesting things. They have logic puzzles, and they have some reading comprehension stuff, and they have building thinking skills, doing analogies, and things that kind of lie outside your typical, you know, book curriculum. And so I've used that a lot all throughout their education. And then as far as the literature goes, you know, honestly, we're not reading Beowulf. You know, we're not doing it. They would hate it. I would hate it. And I don't want them to develop a real distaste for literature. You know, so we do a little bit of Shakespeare. You know, they read a little bit of it, and then we'll go to a couple plays. You know, so they understand what Shakespeare is, who he is, but, you know, they're not loving it. I'm not going to force them to take an entire semester of Shakespeare. So we really do kind of curtail their literature to their interests while still exposing them to a variety of literature out there. And then as far as other curriculum goes, how I chose curriculum throughout this whole time, I made one big mistake over and over again. I wanted it to be perfect. You know, I was finding the perfect, you know, the perfect thing. I love this, you know. And in my effort to find something perfect, I lost a lot. I lost time. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You know, there's certain things that you might be a priority to you, so you'd spend more time in finding something that really, really works. But it doesn't have to be perfect. And so I kind of drove myself crazy with that a little bit. And then in the high school years, they are doing, like my oldest 2, one mistake, I'm just sharing all my mistakes with you. I started my oldest with physical science because he was a freshman, and then my daughter was an 8th grader. And then we were like 3 months into the year, and then I had this thought in my head, like, oh my gosh, next year I'm going to have like 3 different sciences. What am I thinking? You know, I can't do this, especially because they're not great at picking it up on their own. They need, you know, people making sure that they need me making sure that they understand. And so I got my daughter on board with my son. And so we did science with those 2 together. And so pairing them up, you know, especially, you know, you can do that in younger ages or older ages, you know, for something that is more of a level base, you know, I started pairing them up, and it really took a load off my mind. And, but prior to that, we did in the younger grades, we all 4 of my kids, we all did history together. We all read the same books. You know, we might have The older ones may have done a little bit more with it, but you know, we all read the same stuff. We all studied light together. We did lasers together. We did space together. You know, there's no reason why a sixth grader and a third grader can't learn the same science. You know, we just learned it together as a family, and that was a huge time saver. You know, I've seen families try to have each kid having their own. Oh, this is sixth grade science is this, and third grade science. No, you know, there's nothing to say that third graders have to be learning X in science and fifth graders have to be learning Y. We just learned all the same things in history and science together, and that was good. So there's some good things, and there were some bad choices that I made, and hopefully you won't repeat those. Oh, one of the things that you know, I said I had a child on the autism spectrum. I have gleaned a lot from the homeschooling community. My son is, you know, he's real hard on himself, you know, and he got to that point where, you know, when he was little, he didn't realize how hard learning was until he saw his siblings and saw how easy it was for them, you know, and that was pretty hard. That was pretty hard for him. But being at home, I just realized how much encouragement he needs. You know, my youngest son, he doesn't need a lot of encouragement. You know, he thinks he thinks well of himself, you know. But my oldest one needs a lot of encouragement, you know. So having them at home allowed me to really give him what he needs. And I really encourage you guys to reach out to your homeschooling communities. One perfect example, my daughter was having a hard time reading, you know, and I taught her phonics. You know, we learned phonics, and she knew all of her phonograms cold. I mean, no worries. And so, but she would skip like the first letter or two in every word, and then she would word guess. She'd be like, guess the words. I'm like, what are you word guessing for? You know the letter sounds, you know, why aren't you just kind of putting this together? And I thought she might be dyslexic and things like that. So took her a couple of places to have evaluated. It was very awkward. And then I reached out to the homeschooling moms. And sure enough, there was a mom that said, hey, why don't you try this eye doctor up in Northbrook? She has a place called the Mind-Eye Connection. And she specialized in how information comes through our eyes and is processed in the brain. Sure enough, she went through like an hour and a half of testing, and she has extremely weak peripheral eye muscles. And that was it. That was it. She had to wear special tinted glasses for a couple months, and then the issue was gone. And I never would have gotten that from anyone. It was a group of homeschool moms, you know, so the community is rich with help and with guidance. And there's never been an issue probably that anyone's experiencing that someone hasn't experienced before. So really being connected with other groups of homeschoolers is, I think, really, really important.
All right. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's a really important thing. Thank you for sharing. Gretchen, are you ready if I spotlight you here? I can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was gonna say, totally with the groups and the other people getting together with other homeschoolers, that's a huge deal, especially, but with COVID, I'm not really sure how that's gonna work exactly. Before COVID, we had groups that would get together, and there's always this stigma like, oh, homeschoolers are unsocial. Homeschoolers are, it's not true at all. It's basically, we Colleen and I and a bunch of other people, you know, people created groups that that are online, that get together. There's co-ops that are almost like mini schools that happen. I don't know if that's going to happen with COVID, but on a normal year, if you're like, you know what, I really suck at math, but I really want, you know, I'd like someone else to teach it. There are things called co-ops that you can join that other parents who maybe have a degree in math can teach. So there's a lot of options. The first thing I would say is, first of all, my kids are in school. So I homeschooled for 6 years, and I think I learned an insane amount of information during those 6 years. And I still have tremendous respect for all homeschoolers, and I still feel like I'm homeschooler, even though I am in regular school. I feel like I'm both. So I don't think I'll ever, once you do it, you're gonna always have like a little like attachment. But anyway, so I was gonna say, one thing I can tell you about homeschooling is do it. Because first of all, your children will benefit. You know, if you're thinking about taking like a year off, so I did it for 6 years. Now they're in school. I can tell you, my kids have one of the most well-rounded educations out there. They can socialize with people unlike other kids that are in school and are on their phone the whole time. They can socialize with people. They're extremely smart. You know, I did what was called more of like a traditional, and I was traditional eclectic. So you're gonna find all these little vocabulary terms as you do this, and these ladies that'll come up to you and they'll go, "Oh, so what style are you? Are you a Charlotte Mason? Are you?" And you're gonna be like, I don't know. There's canned curriculum. There's so much. This is like a subculture. There's so much that you can learn here. But I will tell you, it's going to be a beautiful experience. You are not going to regret it. There's nothing in you that's going to be like, you know what I really wish? I really wish I spent less time with my kids. Never. You're going to be so excited that you took the time, even if it's for a year, even if it's just COVID and you're like, you know, that was good for me. Now I'm going back to school. You're never going to regret the time, ever. But I will tell you, you will become probably more open-minded. And you will meet a lot of different ladies that will be teaching their children in totally different ways than you. So they might say, oh, I do it this way, I do it this way. Some people are very religious, some are secular. You're going to find all types of people. But I will say that homeschoolers in general are probably some of the most open-minded people that you'll meet, because we accept that not everything is inside the box. There are many people don't learn inside the box. So if you put them in a situation where, let's say they need a little extra help here, but they can't get it or something like that, you have to think outside the box. And with homeschooling, you can really tailor your education to your child. Instead of the school saying, you know, here is the education that all children must learn at age 9. Your child might be learning at age 11 level in reading. And are you gonna, you know, so you can really tailor it to fit their specific needs, which is really cool. One thing I can tell you about going back to school, if this is just going to be for a year, or that's your plan, at least initially, you're going to try it out. One thing I can tell you is you don't really need to have an accredited school until high school. So high school, then you have to, in order to count like freshman year, sophomore year and stuff like that, you have to do like an online or some kind of an accredited school. Karen's probably much more, if you have questions about high school, she's the one you want to ask. We only went till 8th grade and then went to high school. But for me, I didn't have to have any kind of records because they really don't count it up until then for whatever reason, at least in DeKalb and Sycamore and stuff like that. You need to try to keep your kid approximately at grade level, because you can't just be like, you know what, we're going to homeschool, but then we're actually not going to school at all. You can't do that, because there are people that can come and check. It's not common, but if somebody feels like you're not, you know, like you just decided, yeah, I'm not going to teach them how to read, you know, there are people who can come and check on you and you can get in trouble. So you really have to make sure that you're keeping them about where they should be. Maybe, you know, a grade or two about where they should be education wise, if that makes any sense. That's the safest thing to do. Does it happen a lot? No. But should you? Probably. Or what if you had to put them in school? You don't want to have like a big catastrophe. So that's what I would say. For me, we handpicked our curriculum. My kids love history, which a lot of kids don't, because how it's presented in school is a lot of times like, let's memorize 6,000 dates, that you're like, okay. And they skip around, you know, and stuff like that. I really liked this curriculum called Story of the World, and it started at nomads and went forward. So it was really like one big long story. It also had like a world view, so it wasn't just like a American or whatever. It was kind of everything, and I thought that was a really good curriculum. Math UC I really liked for math. Math UC is a mastery approach to math. So if you're just doing this for a year, it may be a good additive for you. But if you're going right back to Common Core, it might be a good idea to kind of keep going a little bit with that too, so that you're not completely behind. The only thing that I can say was a little bit off when we went back to school was our math. And I had tutored, so I tutored everything up to 8th grade. I had tutored math, and I pretty much used Mastery. But the last year before we went back to school, I went back to Common Core in order to get them more ready to go back to Common Core, which I hate Common Core. I'm just going to tell you that right now. But I did it because I'm like, I want the adjustment to be easier. It still was difficult. So math is something, maybe Karen is also really good at math. Maybe find out about that. And then as far as, I think you're really going to love it. And I think you also got to let go of the whole, like some other moms had said, like we do school 8 to 6, or you do it when it's convenient for you during the day, when it's convenient. And you can even break it up. You can be like, okay, I'm going to do 2 subjects in the morning. We'll come back. We're going to do some subjects later. But the important thing is you're going to love this time with your kids. And I can promise you, I did it for 6 years. My kids have been in public, private, and homeschool. So I've had all 3 experiences. And we are back to public now, and we love it. But I can tell you, you're not going to regret this time. You're going to absolutely love it. You're going to love rediscovering so many things with your child. And so I don't know, I highly recommend it. And I think you can always go back to school. You always have that option. But I would never not do it again. So that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing. And I just wanted to warn everybody, we are still recording. I'm going to go back to the gallery view so we can answer some of your questions. So if you'd like to not be in recording that the library is going to have, this would be the time to turn off your video. I'm going to, let me see. Oh, there we go, cancel it. All right, so everybody should be able to go back to gallery view. Is that working for everybody else now? So you can see everybody all at once. Okay. So we're going to start with a couple of questions that were sent to us prior. I'm going to go through mine really quick. And I did want to let you know I'm aware that we are about 8 minutes to when the library listed the ending of this. I'm willing to stay on and answer questions as long as you would like. We're at least going to go through our pre-asked questions. And yeah, I think, I think Laura knows how to get a hold of me if she needs to ask any questions. Interesting to go over the D28 meeting because I cleverly scheduled this on the same day as the District 28 board meeting. So I'm going to go ahead with a couple questions that I have. One of them was, do you know any households that homeschool even though the parent is not home full-time? So actually I have done some of that. So I mentioned that I homeschool a kid full-time and a couple part-time. I actually got into homeschooling because one of the parents of the kids in my classroom, when I left the classroom, asked me to homeschool their child. So I homeschooled her from 5th grade through 8th grade. I did that as kind of like a private business type thing, just basically a private tutor. That is going to be something that's a little more difficult to find during COVID. Like Gretchen brought up, some good concerns about that. But that is something that a lot of times people who do work full time, they will find someone to watch the child during the day, and they usually, if the child's older, sometimes they can leave a little bit of work with them to do during the day, and then the kid asks questions at night, or sometimes they just do all the work at night. Because again, for a typical child, you really don't need more than a couple hours a day until they get like a little bit older, and it really depends on what they're doing, where they're at. But it's usually something that can be figured out. If the thing about homeschooling is no matter what your situation, I've seen people figure it out. It depends on how committed you are to feeling like this is important to your family. And I'm not saying this needs to be the most important thing, but if you feel like this is something very important to your family, then you'll find a way to figure it out. And that I've seen some moms get really creative with like Gretchen and I a couple times when she was homeschooling, like we traded off kids sometimes just for the heck of it, because sometimes it gets a little much. So there were some days like we did a dissection lesson with our kids together when they were in middle school. So we did, some kind of stuff like that. A lot of moms will trade off lessons like that, and that's something that, you can explore those options too if you're working full time. And then my other question I had is Illinois state standards. There are not any yearly assessments required. That was one of the questions. Particularly, like Gretchen said, there's really not much oversight for most kids until they hit high school. When I did speak to the superintendent, and I was advised that for most, I was just saying like there's going to be a lot of people exploring this option right now. How can we help them reintegrate best we can if they're going back after this year? And I was assured it's just the same procedure as always, which is they'll just test your child and they'll place them where they need to be. It's a little bit more difficult if you go back in the middle of high school, because every high school in Illinois gets to decide whether or not they accept homeschool credits, and the ones in our area do not. So they will test you back in, or sometimes they will try to make you repeat a grade. There are some legal options for that. If you're interested in that, there's a great organization called HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, I think it is. They're not the only legal association, but they're the very well-known one. I believe you pay like $20 or $30 a year, and if you ever have any problems, they will defend you. If you ever have any issues. I've known a lot of people who have been a member of HSLDA. I've never known anyone who's actually needed to use their services, though. So again, some people just feel more secure, but it's not really something you need. And then, as far as assessments, Illinois is a state that's very good about protecting homeschoolers' rights. So there's no legal requirement for testing. There's no legal requirement for grading. Like I said, once you get into high school, you probably want to look into some kind of transcript and tracking records, because it just makes it easier for them if they're going to transition into college or a job that requires a diploma. And that's definitely something that you can do too. And again, I'd recommend the Johnsburg Public Library. That's really great with that. Let's see. And then, so Cher, do you mind hitting your question next?
Sure.
Okay. These are the questions that we received beforehand, so we're going to go through these really quick.
Yeah, the question was, if a child struggles with reading or another subject, where do you go for help if you're homeschooling? And so I will reiterate what Karen said. Go to your homeschool community. I think that's really great, because yes, chances are you're not the only one. There's others that have been there and that might have some really good resources to share or ideas. Me personally, what I believe there are really, and maybe you could disagree with me if you want for high school, but there's no educational emergencies. School has their timeline, but your kids are home now. And so with a lot of these things, there's not really a rush. And one of those is like that kids have to read at 5 years old on the same day at exactly the same time. The window for learning to read is actually very, very wide. And so I also don't want you to feel like, oh shoot, if my kid doesn't read by the time they're 8 years old, DCFS is going to come knocking on my door and they're going to take my child away from me. That is so not true. And so I think kids will read when they're ready and when there's something meaningful for them to read. I heard another homeschool person talk and say, Harry Potter is responsible for getting millions of kids to learn to read, because they wanted to read it and they were willing to put in the effort, and they're like, by golly, I'm going to learn to read. Or video games, very high motivation for kids to read. And so, I would say also too, a lot of curriculum companies provide support. You can call a lot of these places and they'll help you utilize their resources to help your kids. But some things, turn on subtitles on their TV programs. Choose books that are interesting. Read to your children. Let your kids see you reading. Words on signs. There's words everywhere. Don't force it. And so another subject, for math, cook. use money, play Monopoly, calculate points on your video game. You know, all those little things are just little tricks and tidbits. So.
My sister loves to say that if you think you don't like reading, you just haven't found what you like to read yet. I think that's a great thing to think about like that. All right.
And to piggyback on that, we did have our oldest evaluated a couple times. And so we did that totally outside the public school. You know, we did have to pay for it. And we gleaned a lot from that. You know, we saw where his strengths were, where his weaknesses were. We discovered that he had a lack of communication between the hemispheres of his brain. So what did? We gave him guitar lessons, because they were using the right and left hands, you know, forces that communication. So, but yeah, so there's other options out there. There's plenty of options out there.
And Karen, as long as you're on, do you mind if I hand over to you about the high school questions?
Sure. About how many days, the first one was how many hours per day do like my kids spend doing their work? Wow, you know, it can vary a lot, you know, depending on the kid. So, you know, you could have the same math lesson given to two kids. One kid's gonna finish it in a half hour, the other one's gonna finish it in an hour and a half. You know, so some kids just take a little bit longer. They take a little bit longer to read, you know, so it can vary quite a bit. But I'll tell you what, we are not up to 11 o'clock doing homework. We just, that doesn't happen at our house, because it's not like you have a lesson and then you have to do the homework, you know, later on in the day. You know, we learn and we do at the same time. And so that tends to be more efficient. So we'll start definitely by 8 for sure. And then the kids have swim practice at 4. And then, so we're mostly done in that time. They might have a little bit of reading to do, you know, a little bit later if they were not efficient with their time. So that's a big factor in there too. And then as far as the technology for high school, I mean, we use a computer with a webcam, and for math, they have a graphing calculator. It's no different than any other high school. And then we bought a microscope for biology and a chemistry set for chemistry, you know. So those were, you know, technology wise, it wasn't a lot.
Someone had asked about what technology you need for high school, and I mean, like Karen said, it's that, you know, everyone kind of picks what they need based on what their kids are learning. So
yeah.
All right, and then Gretchen, I think you kind of already answered the question. Someone else asked about, you know, can you mention some curricula that you liked? I think you kind of already talked about some curricula that you liked and why you liked those.
Yeah, and I think also I was gonna say, as far as you can be a little bit flexible about what you use. There's this online, you can go to rainbowresource.com, and that has a slew of material that you can choose from. So you can go in there and be like, okay, I'm gonna do an English book, and it even has like a little review on it. You can also talk to other homeschool moms and be like, hey, what did you think about this book, blah, blah, blah. And that's a lot of it is weird, but that's what we talk about a lot of times.
We're very excited.
Or this should be like a pickup line for homeschool moms, is like, what kind of curriculum do you like? Literally, that's all we talk about that all the time. But anyway, hi Sam, look at this. Get out of here. So anyway, yeah, I think there's a ton of really good options out there. It's so fun. You're gonna love it. I don't know. Is there anything else?
I'm going to open up for just general questions too, but I did want to say before that, I know that some of the other questions I've heard a lot are about, there's always questions about choosing curriculum. There's always questions about legality and what you need to do to be a legal homeschool. And I just want to say, if anybody's interested, my predecessor that I inherited the homeschool group from made a lovely document about, you know, a bunch of resources and links of where to find things and how to get started on things. If you're interested in me sending that to you, I think some of you have my email, but my email is cowsrock, COWZROC @gmail.com. Everyone remembers it. You could laughing over there. Feel free to send me an email there and I'll send that to you. And because I really feel like if we sat and tried to go through all of our curriculum and all of our choices and all the things, it would just take too much time. It's really something that, you know, should be done on your own. And then there's always, there's always this group of moms that are ready to discuss once you've looked at things like, hey, I saw this. Have you had any experience with this?
Oh yeah.
So did anybody have any other questions that have not been addressed yet? I know we're a little bit over time, but if, I still have some time if anybody has anything they'd like to ask. We are still here.
Hey guys, thank you for all the information. Sorry, I've been camera off and my kids have been running around like crazy, so I've kept it on mute this whole time. I guess my question is, well, obviously I'm thinking about homeschooling this year because I'm not really 100% confident. My kids go to Sycamore Public School. I'm not 100% confident because a lot of my friends are teachers and they're not confident yet that they're going to be able to even do e-learning well. My issues are my daughter is right at grade level, but my son is quite advanced and he's going into second grade. So I guess I've been looking into curriculums and I also work. So I don't really know, I guess that's where I'm lost. I don't know like what I should do for him, if I'm going to be able to challenge him well enough. Do I just buy like a second grade curriculum and try to do that? Do I do third grade? I guess that's kind of where I'm kind of lost. Like I've been looking at online programs, even online private schools. I'm lost. And then I'm like, do I just do e-learning and hope that it's okay? I guess it's kind of where I'm at. I don't really know. Just looking into this starting out, I mean, I would love to homeschool, but I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to, like you guys have said a lot, like it's fine, but I'm worried I'm not going to be able to do enough, especially since I work part-time. So I'm gone 3 days a week. I'm like, and my parents will probably be the ones watching them when I'm at work. And they've already said, no, we're not doing any schooling. So I'm like, I don't know if we'll be able to still get everything accomplished and I'll get, because he loves to be challenged and he already isn't bored in regular school. So I'm not really sure what to do about that. So I don't know if anybody has any insight.
I have a suggestion. I mean, I had a gifted child, but what I did is, if you're just planning on trying it out for a year, and you guys can all put in your input. This is just my input. So, but what I would do is I would maybe do like a canned curriculum, which is basically like something that you would do online or whatever. And then I would maybe look into at like the rainbowresource.com, look into things that could add on to what he's learning for school. And maybe even sometimes they'll even have like little gifted things in there for gifted kids, but it might help to just add on to what he's doing already if you're just planning for like a year. Because then I think likely you will at least be kept on track with what everyone is doing, but you could help him a little bit. That's just my thought.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. We've actually talked about the homeschooling option about him before, just because I hate to say he's bored at school, but we've had multiple meetings with his principal, his teacher. I've even gone and sat down with the director of curriculum for Sycamore Schools, and she actually was like, oh, just pay extra and send him to this NIU program in Naperville after school. I'm like, oh, that's helpful. Take him to Naperville after school program. She's like, that's what I did with my gifted kid. I'm like, well, because they refuse. They do walk-up starting in third grade, which actually they are ending, I've heard, this year or next year, so that doesn't help him. But they refuse to do anything more, and so we were taking him to educate in Sycamore, not to tutor him, just to challenge him, because I didn't know what else to do for him, and you know what
you might like. So you might want to look into another area of homeschooling. Another genre is classical, and classical is a little more. That's more like the kind of stuff like Plato, Aristotle, all those people kind of used as like a model. Was it Trivium, or I can't remember the name of it.
It's the Trivium. Yeah.
The Trivium, and sometimes you might find a couple of books out there that would be more in line with how he is, that might go with him, more of like a classical thing. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts?
All right, sure.
Yeah. I mean, yes to everything Gretchen said, of course. Just two little random things. A lot of curriculums will have placement tests. So my son Calvin was, like you're saying, very advanced in school, and we didn't have anything for him in second grade. And so they just wanted to give him more stuff to do. And I felt like his little fingers were already so tired doing so many things. And so when we brought him home, I did a SAC placement test with him. And we just did like the next grade level up. That's what he was ready for, at the time when we started. And so placement tests are a good way to figure out where maybe he might be ready for. And another thing, those couple days with the grandparents, I mean, what an amazing opportunity for them to like pour into your kid by, baking or, tinkering in the garage or whatever. And those are such awesome education opportunities. I just want you to see that as like not a waste, but an awesome.
Yeah, no, they do a lot of stuff like that. And my mom is great with arts and crafts. So we'll have that covered. It's just, it was kind of like, if we do e-learning, they've already said they have to sign in every day at a certain time and stuff like that. And I'm afraid that my parents they've already said they don't want to do that with them. They're like, we've done our schooling with our kids, we're done. And so I'm afraid that if we choose to do the e-learning, because the schedule that they have right now is not going to work for my husband and my work schedule. So we think we're going to have to keep them home. My parents have said they will watch them on the days that I work. It's just, they're not going to do it. Like, we might have to look for other options besides the e-learning, because they're going to have to sign on at certain times for e-learning, and they've already said they're not doing that. So I'm like, well, okay, now we got to look at other options, which, like I said, homeschooling has come up in the past about my son, especially just because we're just like, what do we do with him? He very much, I mean, Karen, you'd love this. He goes to bed with a calculator some nights and just wants to play around with it and numbers. I mean,
Oh, you froze.
He's really into math, and he's like, so it's just, he's got this natural memory. He remembers everything. So, yeah, that's one of those things we've talked about. Like, how do we challenge him? Should we pull him out of regular school? And we've looked into things, and he's only going into second grade, but still we want to make sure we do the right thing for him.
Right. There's only a few subject areas where, let's say you do this for a year and then you want to put him back, in the public school. There's really maybe just a couple of little areas where you really need to keep on track. I mean, there's no keeping on track for like social studies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there really just isn't. You don't have to worry about that. Maybe English, some grammar, sentence structure, and, math for sure. Math is the big one. And just to kind of keep going, and but they can study what they want in science. Have them pick something that's fascinating to them. Learn about light. That's so cool. And just they can really do some delight directed learning for this year. And and this year, even if you say, okay, I want to continue doing this, well, then maybe you adjust it for the next year. You just kind of worry about 1 year at a time. Art of problem solving has really great math stuff as far as some really challenging math problems. I'm not sure how early they go. Second grade is still pretty young. But art of problem solving really has a lot of good stuff. Math Mammoth also, no, they're very worksheet based. Okay, Math Mammoth. But if, some kids just love doing worksheets. But they're great. She, the writer of the program, really has great juicy problems, and really develops the ideas quite well. And that's just a PDF download, Math Mammoth, and you can do by grade or you can do by topic. You can say, hey, let's learn about this. Do you want to learn about percents? Hey, you haven't done it in school yet. Why not? Learn about percents, or you have to do fractions. You should do fractions first. But
he told me.
But just you can do and like what I mentioned before, Critical Thinking Press has some great stuff, and it's kind of about logic puzzles and stuff that, I mean, they get hard, and so there's a lot of ways to challenge them in that way. I wouldn't worry too much about curriculum other than math and say maybe spelling, and just some math and language arts. Those are the two biggies.
Well, and Tracy, I just want to say I hear that you're really concerned about making sure that he's getting what he's needing. And I think that's really a common concern among, I don't even want to say every homeschool parent, because it's just being a parent. Mm-hmm. Everyone is concerned about their kids. I said I wasn't going to cry. I cry easily with kids involved. But I just want to say, knowing you a little bit, I just want to say that I don't think that's ever going to be a concern with your children. I don't think they're ever going to be in danger of not being cared about enough. So, I mean, even if there are days when they are, you have your son with your parents for a few days and you're not doing, they're not doing anything school with them during those days, or you do a little bit at night, it's not something like where I think you need to feel like it has to be every day. Just on the basis of being one-on-one with you, it's going to be, especially because he is a gifted kid, it's going to be a lot easier. The other thing too is like with gifted kids, I think a lot of people tend to not realize that gifted kids it's a different learning ability, and people tend to treat it not like that. They think, oh, this kid will be fine, they'll coast. The kid learns to coast, they learn to, do just enough. And, being at home, you can really address that more and push them a little bit more. So it sounds like maybe for your particular situation, it might be a good fit. And, like Gretchen says, always you can try it a year, try it out. It's, something you can test out for yourself. It works.
Right.
Well, trust me, it's second grade. So if this doesn't work, like you're like, man, this was crazy, I promise you nothing's gonna happen for third grade after. Like, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah. See, my daughter's in 5th grade and she's always, she's right where she needs to be. She's always done really well. And, I was like crazy. I mean, I'm looking like I can do online programs with her, things like that. But most of those things say they start, at 3rd grade. I'm like, okay, so now it's bookwork for Edison at 2nd grade. And I'm like, oh, that's what my worry was. Can I do most of the bookwork, keep up with it, and still give him what he needs, out of that, and she would be doing online maybe, because it looked like it, a lot of the programs I was looking into is like, oh, bookwork up until 2nd, then 3rd grade, they can do online, which I was thinking was a good option, only because my parents, if they sit down in front of your laptops and start doing online while my parents are there, then, they'd be, and my daughter's really good. She would be fine doing that. She's very self-directed, already. And so she would sit down and just do her work. But I was like, they don't want to do the work with him, maybe. I'm like, what do I do? So it's good to know, because, knowing him, he would spend probably in the afternoons and evenings after dinner, hopefully sit down and work with me, maybe, so. Also, maybe he just does it during the day and he does it at night. I don't know.
Well, and if you're doing like the e-learning that the school is providing, they need you to go at a certain time. You don't have to do that. You can get another online curriculum if online is what you want to do, and you can do it at the time that you want to do it. And you don't even have to do it every day, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
So
most of them are not like that. You can check in as long as you have like a time frame for most of them, where it's like you can get this done in a week, and then like there's a professor that grades or an instructor that grades.
They give you like, they give you like a syllabus, and then they're like, hey, so I don't know. I think, I don't know if I do e-learning if it's going to be a time thing for you.
I know that's our biggest concern right now. We're trying to figure this all out.
Right. And it sounds like you have like a curriculum concern. You're more than welcome to join my Facebook group. It's DeKalb County Home Educators. There are a lot of, and like I said, I can send the document, but sometimes it's better just to talk to moms who like have gone through the gifted kid phase and find out what works for them.
Yeah.
So I would definitely suggest, like, I think you've got my email, like, send me an email, I'll send you that document. You look it over and think, hey, there's some things I think, these are some curricula I think might be interesting, get on, talk to some other moms. Because it's really just, it's about helping other moms and figuring it out.
This is only for homeschool moms. And on those groups, there's like 100, there's a ton of people. And then there's St. Charles Area Homeschool Support too, that one.
Right.
So there's a couple of different groups out there too. And you'll get what you need. There's plenty of support.
Okay. Well, thank you, Liz. I really appreciate it, because I've been kind of looking at this all on my own, and I'm like, oh, I just don't know. It's overwhelming.
It's a big decision for a lot of people.
If you can do it,
we understand. We're all a little more comfortable where we are homeschooling now, but we've all been where you are. We all got to there from where you are. So does anybody, it looks like Shannon has a question. I understand if my son's going to high school and just wanting to try homeschooling out, maybe difficult for him to turn the grade he'd be in next year if we choose not to continue. Unfortunately, that is in our district, because the DeKalb High School is not overly interested in working with homeschoolers. And I can't honestly say I blame them, because it's a lot of extra work for them, and it's a lot of things that they need to do. So legally, you are allowed access to any services that the public school can provide. If there's anyone with like kids with special needs, legally, you can homeschool your kid and get any services you like. The problem is that the schools are always going to prioritize the public school kids. And so that's where the problem comes in when you're trying to return your kid to the public school and high school, is they're not necessarily going to accept credit. So that is one of the things that is a little unfortunate about our area, is once you've committed to high school, it's from what I was told by the superintendent, is they will test them back in, but they're not going to accept your, word at face value. If my kid did this many credits of language arts, this many credits of math or algebra or geometry too, or whatever it is, they're going to test them back in, and they may not accept those credits. So that is one thing that I realize is going to be difficult for the high schoolers. Sorry, go ahead.
But isn't it if they have an accredited school, isn't that fine?
Right, if you have an accredited, yes. But the problem is the average mom is not accredited. So that's where, like, if you do want to try it for your child, that's a good point. So there are online schools where there are accredited, so they will give you, like, a certain high school credit. So if you're concerned about that and you're wanting to try homeschooling, probably your best bet is going through an online school. Which may not feel a lot different than e-learning, but again, they give you a lot more time for. There's, like, you get this done in this time frame. It's not like you check in at this time, check in at this time. There are some classes like that, but you can really look for a lot of different options. So hopefully that answered your question.
The other option is, let's say you try homeschooling out for their freshman and sophomore year, and they want to go back to the high school. They can take a placement test and be put in the correct course for math and such. You can take any classes that you want, but they don't have to accept yours, as was stated. But you can take any classes you want and then graduate them from your homeschool. So those high school classes can count for your homeschool. And they won't be able to walk, graduation, and stuff like that. But you can make it work. You just won't get a diploma from the high school. You'll get a diploma from your homeschool. So it kind of depends on what you want.
That is a good point.
Well, and I think the one thing that I just want to say is that the accredited thing is what you got to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. And like I mentioned before, if you look at the ISBE requirements, they really, they're not as stringent in high school as most high schools are. Most high schools have a lot more stringent requirements than the ISBE requirements for high school graduation. So like Karen said, if you've done, like a couple years with your kid, it might just be easier to just finish up whatever, 2 language arts credits they need and graduate them, send them to maybe a dual credit option could work, something like that. Let's see. No, you're fine with the Zoom. Yeah, and I think that's a concern for a lot of parents with the teachers. All right, Angie says, trying to ask. Yeah, go ahead if you want to ask a question. How does one find momentum and keep kids on some sort of track? I'll explain. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and just say it, I'm having some issues with my eyes focusing with my contact. So.
No, that's okay. So I guess my overarching question is about if any of you veteran homeschooling mamas have advice on choosing this style. I understand there is a learning curve to it, and I respect the process. Like, I'm all about it. And my son is going into first grade level. So I understand there's a lot of creativity and flexibility there still. But with so much available online, activities be the same as years prior because of COVID. So I can't pick up with the newborn soon and him and be like, we're going to every museum today, Yeah. But for someone like myself and anyone who knows me personally, I get very excited about things. And there's got to be, for our style, some kind of, I liked Cher's idea about, like, there's a routine, even if there's not exact timing, but some kind of structure so that he can stay on track in case we say, okay, let's send you to second grade, that sort of thing. But how do you balance that without the overwhelm of, oh my gosh, there's this curriculum and there's this thing online and then there's this kind of workbook and Colleen's doing this group and blah, blah, blah. And it to the point where there's too much or nothing gets done. Like, too many options causes paralysis, sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely that happens.
And if any of that made sense, if anyone.
It made sense because we've all been there.
I'm like thinking about. Yeah. Yes. So, and go. Thank you.
Go ahead, Cher.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go. Yeah. And so I'm just going to blabber for a little bit, but kind of the way we do it, at least that I've kind of settled on doing right now, is I have a planner, and that functions as my main record keeping thing of everything that we do. Because even though Illinois is very low on regulations and stuff, I would still advise keeping records just for your own benefit, and you just never know if things change. So anyway, I have my planner, And then I just go in and put all the kind of the big things we want to do. Maybe, maybe we joined the co-op and that's every Tuesday, or maybe, I know once a month I want to hit, do an outing, or every Friday I want to go to the library or whatever. And you start adding in that, and then you might add in, okay, well, in September we're gonna start doing some math things and see how that goes. And then maybe October we'll add in, a structured reading, language arts kind of thing or whatever. And you can start putting those things in your planner, and that's planning ahead. And then what you do is kind of at the end of the day, end of the week, whatever, you go back and you plan from behind. And then you put in, oh, well, today, my son, I found he did a puzzle, and it was 100 pieces, and so I wrote that in. We did that today. And we ended up baking, and it ended up turning into this whole thing, and we counted things, and we did fractions, and then you write that in. We did that today. And so then you kind of fill in that, and so you leave like lots of room for any things that could any educational things that could happen during the day. And it feels a lot less, to me at least, it feels a lot less overwhelming, and it makes me feel like I still did things, and I can still look back and see all the cool things we did and all the cool things we learned. And yet I wasn't like a slave to this schedule that I made for myself, and then I didn't do things, and then I had to scratch a bunch of stuff off. I'm saying, because that feels bad to me. I would rather add things than scratch things off. And so that's my input.
I don't know. I mean, I always had the, and I don't know if this is your style. I know, and you seem like very hands-on and stuff, and I think you'll be a really good homeschool mom. But I think you may want to consider having some sort of a he's going to go into first grade, having some sort of like a curriculum that's like first grade, like generic, so that at least you have some kind of a guide to feel like, okay, what I'm supposed to be teaching, at least the first year, because I have a feeling that you're going to like it enough that you'll probably feel more confident the longer you do it. I think initially sometimes everyone gets scared. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to pick, and what if it's the wrong thing? So it might help you to have like a guide, meaning like a canned curriculum for first grade that you loosely follow, and you can go as loose or as tight as you want because it's first grade, but that you kind of have an idea of what's going on in that grade level.
And I would also recommend Kathy Duffy's 101 Top Picks. Kathy Duffy has done a ton of research and reviews on all sorts of things, and she has it really meticulously organized. She talks about, she'll do it according to subject, but then she'll do like all-in-one curriculums, and she'll do pros and she'll do cons, and she, at the beginning of she has a book and she has her stuff online too. She'll talk about different styles of homeschooling. Some folks do it this way and some folks do it this way, and and it kind of describes it. And then she asks really good questions, so you can start thinking, what sort of style do I see myself and my kids? What really works for our family? So I think Kathy Duffy's 101 Top Picks is a huge resource, and there's a lot of great information in there.
Well, and there are also all these, if you Google homeschool style quiz, there, some people have made like the nitty gritty version of that, where you can kind of like get an idea, you fill out your preferences, what you think your child, would want to learn, and it can give you kind of an idea of like, a few different systems that might match up with you guys.
I find on YouTube, you can find reviews. Homeschool moms will video themselves, and
that's cute. There's just so many good resources that you don't know about till you talk to other moms.
But also that big rainbow, remember the big rainbow resource?
Yes, that was the thing. Like, I remember you always had that book, and I always thought like it was always a little overwhelming for me. It's a great resource with a lot of different things in it.
Well, or if you call them or go online, but I think those ladies too, like they actually have homeschooled for like ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a curriculum you have questions about, you can call them and they'll like say, well, it's like this. They have people review the curriculum. So that's another way too.
Mm-hmm. I grew up in a teaching family, so I was always very familiar with teaching stores. So how I usually do it is I go into a teaching store, and I wander around and look at books and pick up things I like and, you know, figure out what I like. So that's kind of like my curriculum browsing. There's a great little store in Aurora called the Chalkboard that is great. Yeah, I love the Chalkboard. They've got all sorts of things. They have like, you know, everything from, you know, planned curricula to just like, you know, workbooks like this to like hand curriculum to, you know, manipulatives and all sorts of little things. So that's, you know, if you're the kind of person who likes touching things and looking at things like me, I definitely recommend that. There's also American Science and Surplus is great. I probably don't need to tell Jessica that though, because she's a science lady over there. But yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, finding your own style is always kind of a concern, but, you know, just know that none of this is going to be wasted time. And like, you know, for Tracy too, it's going to be time you're spending with your kids. It's going to be time you're investing in your kid. Even if it goes horribly wrong in your own mind, it's still going to be time that's worth spending with your child, and time that was, you know, constructive in some way that you may not see till later. So
there's a book too, I want to say it's by Lisa Welchel or something like that, that is like, it talks about the different styles of homeschooling, so you can get familiar with the different styles. And sometimes people are really like very one style. Like Colleen, you're pretty much Charlotte Mason, aren't you, for the most part?
I don't know. I kind of bounce all over the place, but I feel like I kind of resonate with Charlotte Mason a little bit.
But basically, like, you learn about what each style is, and it might be called Homeschool. I don't remember, but I think it's Lisa Welchel might be the author. And anyway, sometimes people prescribe to one style of homeschooling and that's it. And then there's some people that kind of pick and choose, and that's eclectic. So a lot of people are eclectic but some people are like, this is it. So.
Does anybody else have any questions? We're at 8:30. Don't know if people want to have anything else they need to talk about, or you'd rather get going and not see my face anymore.
I think we're good, huh?
Do you guys mind if I ask a quick question?
Go for it, yeah.
So I'm kind of tagging along from Discovery Center tonight, and also my little girl who is similar to Tracy's little boy, and a little gifted one that likes to do all my little science things. We are working on trying to come up with our homeschool curriculum for the fall, and we're talking about possibly offering virtual programming and stuff in person. Are there particular days of the week or times that work for everyone, or themes that you would love us to do, or science topics that you guys need help with?
I really love the Discovery Center's programming in general. You guys do such a great job with homeschooling programming. Like, my kids also have a fun time. And I love sending my kids there, because I would send like the middle school and high schoolers there, and the first time they went, they're like, well, this is dumb. It's a little kid museum. They come back and be like, look at all this cool stuff we did today. So I think you guys really do a good job. And, you know, I sign up for a lot of your classes indiscriminately because I know you'll do a good job. So I'm kind of on board for whatever you do. I mean, we'll probably sign up for some stuff because, you know, I think you guys are really good at connecting with the kids and, you know, meeting them where they need to be.
We just like learning about homeschool anyway, because we talked about it for my little gifted one as an option if school starts falling too far behind. But
sure.
Yeah, Jessica, have you guys ever done dissections?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, because the local why is the name escaping me? The Natural History
Midwest Museum. We have folded Midwest and we are no longer a museum, but I appreciate the shout out.
It was so sad
That's
because I wanted to do dissections there, and that's no.
I know.
We were in the middle of like
dissections there as my internship before I got the job at Discovery Center, so that's where I got my start in museums.
Okay, excellent.
Was that under Molly?
Definitely.
Yeah.
As far as like the older kids are concerned, you know, and even the ones that are doing the remote learning and stuff like that. I know DeKalb came out with a preview of their remote learning. From what I understand, it is a video curriculum. You know, if you're doing 100% remote, then you don't really have you don't have any interaction between a teacher and the student, you know. And so there'll be a real miss on things like dissections and chemistry experiments. So something like that I think would be a huge hit.
Okay, so definitely
Yeah,
chemistry.
I gotta sign off, you guys. Thanks
All right,
for
yeah,
having
I think everyone's kind of done. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you again to everyone presenting. I'm going to stop.
Thank you very much